If you're an American living abroad, listen up. Our Mike Wagenheim caught up with John Calvary. He's the chairperson spearheading those efforts for Mike Bloomberg in 2020 and asked him how the campaign is getting to know voters living abroad.
That is literally the $64,000 question, right? How do we do that? And what we're doing is, interestingly enough, it's old-fashioned way. We're building out a network of people that we know. We're trying to identify friends and family, and where do they have friends, and then how do we build that network out? And then we're doing it a little bit with targeted radio, television, media, kind of the peso model, paid, earned, social, and owned.
I got to ask you, though, is it all worth it in the end? Because you look at the entire Democrats Abroad operation, it brings in about 21 delegates, 13 of those pledged for the convention. All of this effort, all of this expense, is it worth it for that number of delegates?
First of all, every vote is important. Every delegate is important. Depending on how all of this shakes out over the next couple of weeks, there's going to be a really interesting conversation going on in Milwaukee. And we'll remember the day that we were on this program when we talked about those 21 delegates. And that may be the difference between winning and losing. And you have to go back and look at this. 21 delegates is more than Montana, Wyoming, North Dakota, South Dakota, Vermont, and the same number as Delaware. It's not an insignificant number of delegates for a group of people living overseas to get, number one. Number two, we want to fight for every delegate. We think that every vote is important, and we want to make sure that we're building an infrastructure for the Democratic Party that's going to help us get elected and help Democrats get elected in November. And there are many people all over the world that want to participate, and we have to help educate them. Because as you look at it, last time around, only 34,570 people voted. That's amazing when you think about the millions of people that could potentially vote in such a small number. And to bring it to Israel specifically, depending on which number you want to look at, there's somewhere between 100,000 and 200,000 Americans that live in Israel. Well, in 2016, guess how many voted?
Not many.
481. And guess what happened? Bernie Sanders got 69% of the vote. Hillary Clinton got 31. He obtained 10% of those delegates, and she got 3. So the bottom line is we don't want that to happen. And if people don't understand what's going on right now around the world, I think they do. I think they're aware of everything, and they're figuring out, what can I do? How can I be part of the process? Well, guess what? Between March 3rd and March 10th, you can be part of the process. As an American living overseas, you can participate in democratsabroad.org. It's very, very simple. What you have to do, you go on the website, democratsabroad.org/join. You sign up. They literally will email you a ballot, and then you fill it out and email it back. I don't think it could be much simpler than that.
But just make sure you don't also vote in your state primary. You
cannot vote for the presidential primary, but you could vote for all the others. So, for example, if you live in New York or Florida or California, what have you, just make sure that you don't fill out that top box for the presidency, but all the other ones you can participate.
I want to ask you about the event in Tel Aviv. We're only talking about a few hundred votes in Israel in the last election. Obviously, Mike Bloomberg, big name recognition, pro-Israel bona fides. What was the turnout like?
We had a good turnout. Again, you have to understand that we started a bit late in this whole process. You think about the campaign and campaign infrastructure that we've put in place. I am an old-timer. I met with Mike and Patty Harris and Kevin Sheeky and Howard Wolfson November 11th. And when I started full-time on December 2nd, there were about 20 of us. Now we're 2,400 in 43 states. So there's been this ramp, this incredible ramp up. And we're doing the same thing now here. That same day that we were in Tel Aviv, we were having an event in Paris, and we're having an event in London. So therefore, that's this week. Next week, we're back in London, and we're back in Singapore. And if anyone in Israel would like to hold a friend-raiser, because we're not raising money. We're not asking people for money. We're asking for people a little bit of their time and a little bit of effort to make sure we get the vote out.
Bloomberg obviously starting from behind, didn't run in the first 4 states, banking everything not on Tel Aviv, but on Super Tuesday. This is a roll of the dice here. What's it feeling like right now?
I've got to tell you, it's an incredibly optimistic feeling. I think that considering where we were just a few weeks ago to see where we are today, I think the field is narrowing as we speak. South Carolina will probably see maybe 1 or 2 people leave, maybe not. But by Super Tuesday, you're going to see a very much of a narrowing of that field. And what's interesting for us is we're very well positioned to be the alternative to Bernie Sanders. And I think if you are someone who cares about the U.S.-Israel relationship, if you're someone who believes that the U.S.-Israel relationship is something that should be at the core not only of the Republican Party but of the Democratic Party, then you have to look at the candidates and say, okay, who supports Israel? And number one. And number two, who can win in November? And I think both of those answers are going to come up Mike Bloomberg.
John Calvelli, the New York Democrats Abroad chair for the Bloomberg campaign. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Back to you.